It started as one of those rare Saturdays where everything just felt right. The sun was hanging low, throwing that golden light over my backyard. The air was thick with the smell of hickory smoke from the grill, and my friends' laughter was spilling into the neighborhood like music. I had been planning this BBQ for weeks. Marinated ribs, smoked brisket, and a secret spice rub my uncle swore could make enemies shake hands. My backyard wasn't huge, but it was perfect for evenings like this. Folding chairs circled around the grill, kids chased each other in the grass, and the sound of cold soda cans cracking open was pure summer bliss. But while most neighbors waved or smiled as they passed, there was one set of eyes watching that didn't carry warmth. Across the street, from behind her perfectly trimmed hedges, stood Karen, the self-appointed HOA watchdog, clipboard in hand like it was a badge of honor. Karen wasn't her real name, but everyone knew her by it. She had an uncanny ability to sniff out anything she considered against community standards. Whether that was a mailbox painted the wrong shade of beige or a wind chime that dared to make noise past 8 p.m. And when Karen spotted me wheeling out my smoker at 11 in the morning, I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. I noticed her twice peeking from behind her blinds, jotting something down on that clipboard. But I brushed it off. This was my home, my backyard. I'd paid my HOA dues like everyone else. I wasn't about to let one overzealous neighbor ruin it. By 3 p.m., the grill was going full force. Friends were arriving with potato salad, cornbread, and stories from work. Music played low from a portable speaker, classic rock, not even loud enough to be heard past the fence. It was wholesome, harmless, normal. But normal isn't what Karen wanted. At around 3:45, I noticed her emerge from her house, lips pressed into a thin line, marching toward my driveway. She didn't knock. She didn't say hello. She went straight to my side yard and shouted over the fence. "You are in violation of HOA noise and smell ordinances," she declared, as if she were a judge in some backyard courtroom. My guests exchanged amused glances, but I kept my cool. "Karen, it's a barbecue. Nothing illegal here." She wasn't having it. "You can't smoke meat for this long. It's creating a public nuisance. And your music? Completely unacceptable." I started to respond, but she cut me off with the most chilling sentence of the day. "Fine, I'll let the authorities handle this." 15 minutes later, the air shifted. The laughter died down as the distant wail of sirens echoed down our street. My stomach sank, not from fear, but from disbelief. Had she really called the cops over a backyard barbecue? Everyone gathered closer to the fence as the flashing lights came into view, bouncing off the windows of parked cars. A cruiser pulled up slowly, almost theatrically, like it knew it was entering enemy territory. Karen stood proudly in her driveway, arms crossed, waiting for her moment of justice. My guests muttered under their breath, some pulling out phones to record. I stood still, tongs in hand, trying to decide whether to be angry or amused. The police car door opened, and that's when my jaw dropped. It wasn't just any officer stepping out. It was Officer Dan Michaels, a decorated local cop who, as fate would have it, had been my college roommate 10 years ago. He hadn't changed much. Same confident stride, same easy grin, and the same way of scanning a crowd like he knew everyone's secrets. The second he saw me, his face lit up. "No way," he laughed, walking straight past Karen without acknowledging her. "Eddie? Eddie Wilson? Man, what the hell are you doing here?" Karen's proud smirk faltered. "Officer, I called you here because this man is—" But Dan held up a hand. "We'll get to that," he said casually, then clapped me on the shoulder. "Still making that legendary brisket?" The entire backyard burst into laughter. Karen, flustered, tried to regain control. "This is serious. The smoke, the noise." Dan finally turned to her, his smile fading just enough to make his words sting. "Ma'am, I've read the HOA guidelines, and nothing I'm seeing here is illegal. This is a perfectly normal gathering." Unless you've got a different emergency for me, I think we're done. The tension hung in the air like the smell of slow-cooked ribs. Karen's face went red. But... Dan didn't let her finish. If you're concerned about smoke, you might want to take it up with the weather, he said with a smirk. I thought that would be the end of it, but Karen wasn't ready to back down. As Dan walked over to grab a plate, she stormed into the street, dialing her phone again. Within minutes, an SUV pulled up. Another HOA board member, Mrs. Talbot, who had always been Karen's right-hand enforcer. The two of them huddled like generals before a battle, whispering furiously and glancing in my direction. My friends watched like it was live theater. Dan leaned over and whispered, "Want me to stick around?" I grinned. "You might as well. It's about to get interesting." Sure enough, Karen marched back to my fence, holding a stack of printed papers. Per Section 4, Subsection B of the HOA bylaws, you are prohibited from... Dan interrupted, now with a plate of brisket in hand. "Ma'am, I'll be honest, this is the best brisket I've ever had. And unless your bylaws ban good food and friendly neighbors, I'm staying right here." That line sent my guests into hysterics. Karen's eyes darted between the crowd, the cop, and the grill. She realized she was losing her audience, and worse, her authority. The rest of the evening unfolded like a small-town legend in the making. Dan stayed for 2 hours, swapping stories and eating more than his fair share of ribs. Karen and Mrs. Talbot eventually retreated, but not before making one last empty threat about bringing this up at the next HOA meeting. I told them I'd be happy to attend, brisket in tow. My guests roared with laughter at that, and even Dan nearly choked on his food. By the time the sun dipped below the rooftops and the last guest left, I knew this story would be told for years. Not just because Karen's attempt to ruin my BBQ had spectacularly failed, but because the person she called to shut me down turned out to be one of my oldest friends, and he publicly sided with me. In that moment, Karen learned something I'd known all along. When you try to bring unnecessary drama into someone's home, you might just end up the punchline of the neighborhood.